I put my entire career on the line because I believe in what I believe in.
They tracked 100 of these things. This is real. Wake up.
Okay, so I keep hearing from skeptics and debunkers that people like Chris Mellon, Elizondo, David Grusch are grifters out for a quick buck. Now, this really bothers me, not because I'm a massive UFO fanboy or I'm obsessed with Elizondo or David Grusch, but because I think critically and can run the numbers. Now, before I dig into the numbers, let's just bear in mind that people like Elizondo and David Grusch left their services, left their jobs in protest, not on their deathbeds, not years and years later, not when they've run out of money and they've run out of their retirement cash and they want to make some money. We're talking about when they had years left to go, still in those current jobs, not able to yet draw their pensions. Let's jump into the figures. So protagonists and provocateurs will tell you that, look, here's prime evidence. Elizondo's got a book. It's out on Amazon for pre-order. He's going to make loads of money. It's all about money. They'll tell you that he's had articles written about him, that he's been on podcasts, that he's done a couple of seasons of a TV show, and they'll point to the fact that he's on the board of directors at the new UAP Disclosure Fund. So let's start with podcasts. I can tell you for a fact that he wouldn't have got paid on any of the podcasts that he's been on. Podcasters don't really make much money. They certainly don't pay their guests. They certainly haven't got the money to pay their guests. And I can tell you that for a fact midway through season 2. None of my guests have ever been paid or have ever asked to be paid. Book deal. Okay, so let's talk about the new book, Imminent, that's been released on pre-order on Amazon and a few other places. Let's assume and speculate that he makes $200,000 from those books. It's quite possible. I don't know the range of books. I know that it's possible to make a little bit more, but this is a relatively niche area, ufology. So let's say we'll put that figure out there, $200,000 he makes from selling some books. Let's move on to TV shows then. So we've covered podcasts. He's not making any money from that. We talk about the book. He'll start to make some money from that. TV shows. So he did a TV show with the History Channel back in 2019. Again, we can only speculate on how much he made from that because the fees are not publicly disclosed. So let's say, for argument's sake, he was given $100,000 for appearing in season 1 and season 2 of the History Channel show, unidentified. So far, we've got $300,000. So $100,000 from unidentified. We've got $200,000 maybe for the book deal, nothing for the podcast. So we've got $300,000, okay, plus some travel expenses, the odd free hotel, whatever. That's it. Now, he left the service in 2017. That's about 7 years. No pension, no wage from the Department of Defense. Just that income, $300,000. And to keep it simple, I did the maths behind the scenes with regards to tax. So let's say he's paid $76,000 of that $300,000 in tax, roughly. That will leave him with $223,000 and change, or $31,900 roughly per year. Now let's look at what he would have earned if he had stayed in the Department of Defense. Lou Elizondo left the Department of Defense on a GG-15 pay bracket. Now, a GG-15 is a GG government grade 15 pay scale, or a GS-15 government scheme 15 pay bracket. Now, a GG or GS-15 pay bracket is between $133,000 and $177,000, plus benefits, plus pension contributions. Now, we don't know how long Elizondo has left before he can draw his pension. Now, we know that he left the organization, Department of Defense, in 2017. He said publicly in podcasts in the last kind of 12 months that he's got at least a few years left before he can draw his pension. So let's assume it's 3 or 4 years. It's been 7 years already since 2017. So that's about the 10-year period before he says that he can draw his pension. $1.3 to $1.7 million over that period of time. Take away some tax, of course, but it's also pension contributions, Medicare, and all the other benefits that come along with having a secure job in an organization like the Department of Defense or the federal government, where you're not going to be worrying about losing your job because they're going bankrupt or going into insolvency. Now, if we come on to David Grusch, he is also a GS-15 level, so roughly the same kind of amount. Now, these are top-level leadership type roles within the Department of Defense and within the federal government. David Grusch is significantly younger than Elizondo, so would have had an awful lot longer left to work, to earn money, to have pension contributions to his 401k or whatever it is you guys have got over there in the States. So that 1.3, 1.7 million is probably significant more, maybe 2, maybe 2.5. Now, bear in mind that David Grusch hasn't got a book deal out, hasn't been paid on any of the TV shows as far as I'm aware, and I've reached out to some of the other people who have had interviews with him, for example Jesse Michaels, and I've asked the question, have you paid David Grusch? Would you mind sharing that information? Now, they may or may not get back to me, but in my opinion, I think it's highly unlikely that they've received payment. They probably got some kind of expenses, travel expenses, hotel expenses, or whatever it may be. Is it profitable to leave a high-ranking position, David Grusch, equivalent level of a colonel, Lou Elizondo, who's a high-level leadership role, ATIP, for example, GS-15, GG-15, 133 to 177,000 pounds, $1,000 per year. So let's talk about the UAP disclosure funds. Now, Lou Elizondo is a director in that fund, along with people like Gary Nolan and Carl Nell. Now, this is, of course, true. They are directors of this fund, and the debunkers are loving this. But the reality is that they are a registered non-partisan political non-profit 501c4, where directors can only receive reasonable compensation for their services, things like lobbying, to and from meetings, travel, back and forth, but they cannot personally benefit. This is overseen by the IRS for compliance. So really, they're not making any money apart from a bit of travel and maybe some food, maybe a coffee. Again, 1.3 to 1.7 to $2 million versus 300,000 and a free sandwich. Okay, I will leave it there. I just wanted to make that point. It doesn't make sense and the numbers don't add up. It's much more secure to be in an organization like the Department of Defense where you've got a solid, secure, consistent income. You're not going to go bust in that role. You're not going to be made redundant. This is a secure, I mean, the Department of Defense isn't going to go bankrupt and they're going to be paying into your pension or 401k, whatever it is in the States. They're going to be giving you benefits. You're going to be getting Medicare, all those other things that come along with a secure job. The podcast scene, the convention scene, the book sales over the period of time, it doesn't come anywhere close. So is it about the money? I would say no. And I think that the figures prove that and that they stand up to scrutiny. So if you hear that grifter thing, just think 300,000 roughly versus $1 to $2 million. Doesn't make sense. Okay, that's it. Take care, guys.